Hello, welcome back to my channel. How are you doing? Do you still remember me? I know, I kind of disappeared over the last 2 to 3 months, I believe. I know, it's a long time. I was kind of forced to take a break for various reasons, but the important thing is I am back on track, and today I will provide two new videos that will be a little bit different from what I usually do. We won't be talking much about history, real life history anyway. Uh, but what we will be doing is a full breakdown of everything that did and didn't work in Natlan, starting with the latter. So, as you might know, Natlan, the latest Genshin region, is also the one that sparked the most controversy among player. And I won't, I won't lie, I do feel it really feels a lot different than basically every other region. But being the curious researcher that I am not one to just stop at saying, okay, I don't like this. I usually want to know why exactly. And let's say I came up with a series of reasons that might provide a little more bit more insight on the why and how. So if you like, we can discuss together about that. Of course, feel free to leave your comments and your opinions on the matter. And if you're new, if you just came across this by accident and are wondering who I am an archaeologist and Genshin player. I usually do deep delves videos behind real life historical references in Genshin. There are plenty of them. Um, and but as I said, today we will be doing something quite different. If you think you might like this or are curious about Genshin and history, follow me. You can give me a like, give me a follow, comment below, and you can also follow me on HoYoLab. You will find the link in the description. You might also notice some differences in the sound and framing. That's because unfortunately I'm using some different equipment than I usually do. I promise someday I will go back to my old ways, but for now, I'm sorry, it is what it is. Back to the topic. The first question I feel we need to ask ourselves when looking at Natlan is, did Natlan really fail as a region, and if so, why? Well, to be completely honest with you, I don't think so. I don't think Natlan failed as a chapter uh, of the main plot. In relation to the main plot, it actually was one of the very best, and one that uh, directly projects us towards the later stages of the Archon quest. If you look at the general economy of this plot, we are in the sixth region already, so it makes sense that the plot will advance to the point where we lose a little bit of regional detail in favor of more comprehensive themes. But I will actually show you bit by bit how Natlan exactly connects with the main plot and why I'm saying it is the best connected region so far. If you are already interested, you just need to click on the link to the next video. But before that, I will address everything that didn't work in Natlan and that makes us, well, feel a little bit disappointed with it as a region. So, the first point that I find really lacking in Natlan's writing is actually the world building. And this is a point that I don't see coming up much in the discussions that I saw online, But to me, it's really a core failure of this chapter. So, if we look at Natlan, we know that it's divided into six different tribes that are fairly autonomous. I mean, they each have their own chief and administration, I guess. Um, but they are also sort of specialized in one or two activities. The children of echoes are miners and craftsmen. The scions of the canopy are messengers and scouts. The people of the springs are guides chiefly, and also they have this really laid back culture of music and relaxation in the hot springs and all. And I guess since they live uh, well near the sea, they might also be fishermen. As for the Flower Feather clan, they are said to be the elite warriors. They have a very war-centered culture, and at one point they have been said to have been the warrior in the warriors in Natlan. They secured the whole of the nation up until a certain point. As for the Masters of the Night Wind, they are sort of the intellectual elite of the region. They have all the intellectual tasks. They are doctors and mediums and historians. I really have a thing for the Masters of the Night Wind. As for the Collective of Plenty, of course, we still haven't been there, so it still is a bit of a guess, but they seem connected with agriculture. I mean, Baraisa family does own an orchard, and a big one. A big part of the Collective of Plenty's culture seems to be centered around food, and even the name Collective of Plenty uh, let us guess that maybe they are the farmers of the bunch. So it could work a little bit like the six Darshans that we saw in the Sumeru Academia. Except there isn't any kind of central administration. And apart, of course, from the Pyro Archon that every tribe recognizes as its leader. But aside from the pilgrimage, we don't see the six tribes ever cooperate in some sort of organization that would be central and unite all six of them. We don't have a parliament like, I don't know, in some confederations. Let's think about the USA or Switzerland or Germany. We don't have even a central bureau of any kind. We don't have the central administration like we had in the academia. And the thing is, if you look at the other five nations, they each have their own central administration. So Mondstadt has the Knights of Polonius and the Church. Despite lacking a ruling archon, they seem to be managing the situation pretty well. Liyue has had, of course, Zhongli or Morax for a long time, but now the administrations comes down to the Liyue Qixing and the whole Ministry of Civil Affairs. As for Inazuma, Raiden Shogun is very securely in place, and she has the Tree Commission to help her out. Sumeru has recently acknowledged Nahida as a real archon, but the Academia was completely able and totally able to rule even when she was treated like a little cage bird. Yeah. As for Fontaine, I don't need to explain how much work Nobilet has as a state leader. And anyway, we have the maison gestion, the maison gardiennage, uh, and the marechaussee phantom to help. So in every other region, we can see the administration at work. We don't see that in Natlan. In fact, the only thing that ever brings Natlan together is either the pilgrimage or the war. This also undermines Mawika as an archon. I mean, Mawika has a lot of flaws to her character that I will partially address in my full breakdown of the Archon quest, but the fact that we only ever see her as the leader, the military leader, and perhaps also spiritual leader to some extent of our nation, really isn't enough, especially when you compare her to the other archons, except for Benti, who made a clear choice right from the start not to get actively involved in his nation's affair. He acts more as an emergency button. Even Furina, who was actually really focused on acting as an archon, and a very lofty one, and didn't have any particular capacity for ruling, did actually take part in the administration of our nation. She did send spies to watch us, to get informations on us. She was actively researching a solution to Fontaine's prophecy, even if well, she had little success. And she even intervened during trials when she felt like it. And I won't ever bring Neuvillette in the equation because he clearly spends most of his time administrating Fontaine. There's no question about it. The man is a workaholic and he needs some rest. But we don't see Moika ever do that, except for occasionally checking on repairs in a nation. And I get that Natlan has been actively fighting a war for I think a couple thousand years, and that shapes the nation, that will shape the culture and the nation itself, but they still need to function as a nation, and they aren't functioning as a nation. They just are six stripes, one next to the other, without a real structure to them. Anyway, that's what bothers me so much about Natlan's world building. The second element that really feels off about Natlan is one that I saw literally everywhere, and that would be the character design, which is deemed too modern by a large part of the community, myself included. Well, of course, you might disagree, or you might find it refreshing, or whatever. Of course, we each have our own preferences. We can discuss it in the comments if you want. As long as everyone stays polite, I have no problems with it. I will just try to give you my own reasoning here as to why it really does put me off. As well as I will try to give you a possible explanation of why the developers chose to go down this particular route instead of sticking to more traditional elements like they did in all previous nations. Let's start by saying that, of course, no region is actually historically accurate. They all combine different elements taken from different historical periods and sometimes even different region, and put them together into a picture that feels appealing, let's so to speak. As for the technological aspect, we already saw three different civilizations have access to very advanced technology. The first, of course, would be Canria, and then we saw King Dashret's civilization in desert, and finally Fontaine, as also is its very own clockwork mecha. Moreover, the phlogiston-based technology that we see in Natlan has been very well justified in the regional lore. So as we know from the Lord of the Night, phlogiston is actually pure, raw, undivided energy before it got split into the 7 different elements that we can find in Tibet. And the first ones to use this form of energy were the dragons. So it would make sense that the Natlanese learned at some point how to use this kind of energy and, well, just passed the craft down from generation to generation. Not only that, but we have one quite hidden bit of lore that would actually justify the fact that only playable characters have this sort of very modern looking gimmick, while the general population in Natlan seemingly doesn't have the same access to them. If you remember, all the way back in Sumeru, we once met a researcher in the Devantaka mountain where the first of the 3 golems was. That told us a little bit about the history behind Cambrian machines. What he told us is that Cambria actually originally resorted to a mineral called azazite to power its own machines from. And then at some point decided to switch to abyssal cores, reserving azazite cores to only 2 machines that needed to be operated by humans. That tells me Cambrians were always pretty clever, or at least enough not as to not put humans in direct contact with the abyss when possible. Anyway, a few patches later, we actually have a little piece of lore, a document that can be found in one of the underground factories you can explore in the desert, that provides some more information about why exactly Canria decided to switch from azazite cores to abyssal cores. Namely, abyssal cores were more suited to mass production, and with the rising populations and needs, Canria decided to essentially abandon azazite in favor of the abyss. Well, we never got to see how exactly azazite looked. Or did we? Because not only do we see some kind of liquid in those still partially active factories, but there is at least one occasion where we saw some actual azazite cores. If you remember, there is actually an achievement in Sumeru where you have to find 6 different ruined gods powered by azazite cores, and once you activate them with the corresponding couple of azazite cores, you get an encrypted message and unlock the achievement in the name of Portus. Now, those azazite cores look strikingly similar to liquid phlogiston, so it is very likely that azazite and liquid phlogiston and in fact even solid phlogiston that we see in the sulfurous veins and so on, are actually the same thing. And if azazite wasn't suited to mass production, then maybe phlogiston isn't. So, if all of that is true, what is the problem? Personally, if I had to sum it up, I would say Natlan's gadgets look so close to my own personal reality that they don't really make me dream. And don't get me wrong, urban fantasy and modern fantasy is a thing, but I feel like they work on wholly different premises as medieval fantasy like Genshin. Let me explain. Now, this of course is a very personal opinion of mine, but I really find that fantasy all comes down, any kind of fantasy comes down to inserting some kind of supernatural or magical element to the world you are creating. And each subgenre does it in a very different way. So, for example, sci fi heavily relies on new technology that we might or might not invent in the future to add this supernatural element. Modern time fantasy, urban fantasy, often resorts to parallel realities to explain otherworldly elements that wouldn't fit in our modern society and makes us wonder what if it was true? What if vampires existed in our society and they just hid it well? What if titans existed or demigods or whatever? Uh, as for historical fantasy, medieval fantasy, which really should be called historical fantasy, uh, they take advantage of the fact that, well, no one actually was there all the way back in the Middle Ages or whatever historical period you decide to base your own fantasy world in. And therefore, it's quite simple to insert some supernatural elements and even take advantage of some of the beliefs that were passed down in history about magic or alchemy or whatever to make them actually real. And Genshin, as a game, clearly chose the third way, that of medieval or historical fantasy. This also explains why Fontanian and Hanrin machines don't feel as weird to us generally. Fontanian machines are firmly rooted in the Second Industrial Revolution aesthetic, which also fuels, by the way, the whole steampunk culture. So they end up feeling very familiar and very dreamlike to us. Meanwhile, Cameron machines actually include a whole series of elements that make them look way less modern than we might expect. First of all, their texture looks way more like stone than like metal, which is expected on modern looking machines. They also are inscribed with some mysterious runes that kind of look like hieroglyphs. And last but not least, their design is modeled after living beings. This makes them way closer to, for example, the Horizon series machines than to actual robots. We have this idea that the more modern we get, the more the farther we get from nature. So as Cambrian machines maintain this kind of link to living beings, we perceive them as less modern. Uh, Chaska's revolver and Xilonan rollerblades and Mawika's bike all look more or less precisely like modern stuff. So, of course, we immediately feel this belongs in our reality and not in the dreamlike historical reality that we were shown so far in Genshin. This leaves just one last question, namely, why did the Genshin developers choose this particular path for Natlan while they had so much to draw inspiration from? I mean, they made a mix of so many different cultures, including the Maori culture, the Inca Empire, the Maya, the Aztecs or Mexica, and some Native American names also. They had really plenty of sources to look at, and yet they chose to go down the urban culture path. Um, well, one of the reasons could be they might have had less access to good sources on these particular cultures. Um, but I don't know. I feel like Miyoyo would be perfectly capable of finding good literature on civilizations such as those populating Central America and the European Middle Ages to early modern period. Um, the real reason, I believe, lies in somewhere in the raging debate over cultural appropriation and cultural representation that has been all over the States and also Europe in recent years. Um, I know that Miyoyo being a Chinese company, they probably place less value on Western players' opinions. That's also why, unfortunately, we don't have many colored characters. We don't have any black characters, and even the tan ones are pretty rare. Thank God for Ifa. But anyway, I have a feeling, and it's a personal feeling, but still, that Miyoyo tried to avoid the cultural representation issue by just ditching all historical elements and instead referencing urban culture, and especially those elements that can be traced to specific minorities. I wonder if they can still be called minorities. Demographically, I feel like African Americans and Latinos in the USA might be prevalent, at least in some states, but anyway. So they decided to reference the those elements of modern urban culture that are most traditionally associated with these minorities, so such as, for example, rap and hip hop and graffiti and so on. This is, of course, just my personal interpretation. I still think it basically didn't work. They would have been probably better off actually trying to correctly represent those cultures they took the names from. People, I think people would have been way happier with that choice, but yeah, they went down this road and it didn't pay out. This leaves one last point that I think really undermined Natlan in most players' eyes, namely how its central theme, and I'm talking about, of course, the war theme, was handled. Genshin has got us used over the years to somewhat complex and also dark plot lines. Just think of Inazuma, where we arrived in the midst of a civil war, or Sumeru, where we soon discover that the academia has been exploiting its own citizens in order to create a new god, or even Liyue, where as soon as we arrive, we get accused of a murder that we didn't commit and have to flee. And of course, let's not forget all that we learned about Canria and how hilichurls were treated and all of that, because yeah, it sets the mood, doesn't it? With all of that, I think we were all expecting to see something along the lines of death and destruction everywhere in the literal nation of war. And instead, we got the number one overused trope in the whole shonen genre, aka the tournament, which is basically a toned down war. So, yeah. And yet, I'll say it now, and I will develop this all over the next video, which will be a lot longer than this one, probably. But I swear, from the moment we set foot in Natlan, something started to feel very, very unsettling. We heard of the abyss from the very moment we started to talk with Katrina. And the abyss has never been closer. Even in Mondstadt, it was farther removed from the picture, and Mondstadt was attacked by the Abyss Order. But still, we felt more secure, less on the edge. And in fact, it did end up in an actual war, but not an internal war as we probably expected, but a war against something that is inanimate and isn't truly alive. Of course, this kind of undermines the whole concept, but considering the pieces of very important lore Natlan gave us in those same quests, I can't entirely dismiss Natlan's Archon quest as a failure, by no means. But to really know why, you have to watch my next video, because I promise there will be some really big revelations. So that's all for now. Let me know what you think. Did you enjoy Natlan? Or do you agree with me that those points were really off or underwhelming? Let's discuss, and see you very soon. Don't forget to jump to the next video if you want more detailed information.